everybody, and welcome to episode, I believe, 24 of Just One More Podcast. I am Jeff from Just One More Level, and we have John from MyBrainOnGames.com. How you doing, John?
I'm doing good. I think I'm coming down with something or just getting over something. Didn't feel too great last night and kind of carried into today.
I can kind of hear some congestion, but...
Yeah, I got the deep voice. Woke up with a real deep voice this morning.
Probably just going through puberty. It's fine. So, with this episode, we will, for all intents and purposes, for main push through...
You finished Star Ocean.
Yeah, over the last week.
I finished Star Ocean.
Yeah, you finished Star Ocean like a few days before I did. I literally just finished it today. As in regards to today, we are recording a little bit later than usual. This is December 27th of 2022. Just a couple more days of the year left. But Star Ocean: The Divine Force, finally on the games beaten list for both of us. With the last episode, we talked a little bit about just where we were at up to me getting introduced to Captain Curtis of the Pan-Galactic Federation. I can't remember the name of the ship that he...
The Vela Gulf.
Yes, Vela Gulf, which gets mentioned quite a bit through the remaining, 8 hours of the game?
Yeah.
But he's en route to, I believe, Astor 4, right? Or he's... I think he was en route to Astor 4 because of all the stuff that was going on in the area.
I forget the exact reasons because there is a Scorpion battleship. I don't know if he's heading directly for that or if they just happen upon that and then that takes their creates a diversion or they have to engage it.
Which, so I got introduced to him, but that's pretty much where things were left off on the tails of the Star Ocean.
Yeah, so,
with the last episode.
When you finally do rendezvous with him, he gives you a big info dump, and then you guys share information, talk about the Scorpions, and then Scorpion Network, and then come to find out, okay, there's kind of like two factions of Scorpion, the general Scorpion, and then the Centralists.
Which the Centralists have this idea that Scorpion is great. It's a great process. It's integrating into the Scorpion network is
they're just like the
really
extremist
good.
Scorpion.
Yeah, they're and being for a little while it was it seemed like Boldor was kind of the leader of this group, but one thing that I believe Curtis talks about.
No,
is it?
I don't think he talked that gets brought up then. He does, of course, Marielle, party member now. She's a representative of the Federation. She's the one kind of been cluing us into a lot of stuff, and of course, Ray has had history with Federation. Of course, Vergold, his home planet, non-Federation member, so of course they know a lot about each other. But Curtis is thinking, and I think Marielle even wonders, is all of the Federation compromised by the Scorpion Network? Compromised by these Centralists?
Because it definitely seems that way. Just with how everything has kind of panned out with Captain Bennett hunting down ships that have Duma, that are transporting Duma. Mm-hmm. Which, of course, I believe at this point we've already known that Duma has... that they were essentially sent out to investigate any potential life forms to...
Yeah, look for candidates to advance Scorpion's evolution.
So the interest was definitely there for the Federation to track these things down.
Well, for the Centralist Federation.
Well, yeah, for the Centralists.
For those who have been, quote-unquote, compromised.
and it definitely seems like it's kind of the question of, well, who can we trust within the Federation in regards to who's sided with the Centralists and like who's actually still upholding the Federation's like laws and values.
Yeah, which I mean, this Star Ocean series was drawn heavily upon Star Trek, but this specific narrative is almost like verbatim what happened in like the season 2 or season 3 finale of a Star Trek Next Generation.
Yeah. Which, so we're looking at let's see.
They get to after their rendezvous, they reach the Manuke system, engage the Scorpion battleship in combat, and then Ray and team transport aboard, and there they meet JJ.
Yep, the introduction of a fully integrated Scorpion person.
Yeah, and not Centralist Scorpion. He's Scorpion of his own choosing, of the quote unquote regular Scorpion. He would encourage everybody to do it. It was the best thing for him. But one thing I didn't realize until maybe reading through some of this post game stuff was, so JJ is only in Ray's playthrough, and you know how you were wondering about Theo being a playable character? Well, he is in Leticia's playthrough.
Okay, so there are some, at least a little bit of differences between the two different playthroughs, or the two different character choices.
Yeah. So JJ is a Ray exclusive character.
But yeah, I think Duma informs Ray that essentially the Raymond, or not Raymond, but the logistics company, Lawrence Logistics, was essentially dealing with a Scorpium vendor, and that's how all this kind of started. Which, of course, Ray had no idea that he was dealing with a vendor that was in cahoots with Scorpium.
Yeah, but I mean, up until like a little bit ago, they had no idea what Scorpium even was.
Yeah, so pretty easy to kind of fly under the radar, since didn't really know anything about either the vendor that he was going to that he was doing the transporting for, or the fact that it just happens to be Scorpium, which they knew nothing about up until about 3/4 of the way through the story.
Yeah. I mean, they knew Duma, but they didn't know Duma, Scorpium. What is that? I think the first time we heard Scorpium was at the arranged marriage between Leticia and Gerard.
Yeah, and
but on this battleship, they do battle with I think some of the Virians are there. JJ, for his part, he's wanting to protect the non-integrated folks who are on this ship. They've basically been taken hostage, and they were going to be forced into integration by the Centralists, and he's there trying to protect them.
Yeah, just the refugees, which that ship was kind of an interesting traversal as well. Not a whole lot of like out there stuff, but like having to use the dash to move debris around and
kind of make platforms. Yeah.
And one thing that I kind of caught on to fairly late while going through that ship was all of the destructible debris that was around. I just assumed that a lot of the giant piles of debris wasn't something that I could break, so I just kind of went around them. But then I was just like, I wonder if I can destroy that. So I went up to just one pile, destroyed it, got an item from it. I was like, oh, great. So I ended up going all the way back to the beginning just so I can mine all of the different items and stuff, just to make sure I wasn't missing any material. Because I think at that point I still didn't know what I needed to create the essentially love potion type thing.
Tears of Aphrodite.
Yeah. So, and also not really knowing like what all would be needed for like various side quests moving forward. So yeah, I ended up going back to the beginning of the ship and just running back through it, destroying all the different piles of debris, getting all the different items and stuff. I I didn't look to see before we started recording, but I think I finished with around 86 or 88% of treasure chests opened. So I'm wondering if maybe earlier in the game I didn't open certain treasure chests because I didn't really think about it, or I thought, oh, I'll get back to these.
Yeah, I actually just went back to Larkus Weld, and I was starting to go through some old areas again. And I, of course, found some new private actions, like they're never ending, but I did find in Larkus Weld a treasure chest I missed, and I think it was just because it was up on a cliff that I don't think we could have accessed until we got the second burst of the, Duma flight ability.
Yeah, that's, I think that's probably, I need to go back to some of those earlier stages with like all the giant like floating rocks and stuff and just see if I can get up there or if there's a way to, just to see what I missed.
Yeah, I think I'm in like the mid 90%, 96 maybe, 97, and just kind of Googling it real quick and looking at like GameFAQs and some other places. It looked like there are maybe a couple commonly missed treasure chests that are on like a second level of an area that don't show up when you do your scan. So I haven't prioritized that yet, but that'll be one of the things I do before I finally put the game on the shelf.
Especially since you're so close. You're so close to getting that achievement.
The same thing happened in Ys, Memories of Celceta, where I was like missing one treasure chest. And it's like, okay, this is going to be a pain in the butt, but I'm only missing one. I may as well go for it. And then, wound up finding it after traversing like half of the environment. So we'll see if it's the same thing here. Hopefully it won't be as laborious. Hopefully it'll be like, oh, I was only missing two or three of these most commonly missed ones, and then, oh, I got it. All right, 100%.
So one of the notes that I have, I just put really good space battle happening. So part of just with the Minoc fleet, Minoc fleet. Essentially, they're struggling. It seems like they're losing ground to Scorpium. Villa Gulf seems to be kind of holding its own, but there's an additional battleship approaching the Villa Gulf. But yeah, I have a really good space battle happening. A lot of like the space battles, or I guess like the quote unquote like cutscenes, are like less than 5 seconds.
Yeah, like there's a lot of just quick cuts. Like, okay, we're going to show this like ship firing off a laser, and then we're going to transition away real quick. Like you're only going to see it for like 3 seconds, 5 seconds on screen.
It kind of reminded me of like the PS1 era type of stuff that it's like, oh, this is this is going to consume a lot of the budget, so we don't really want this on screen for very long. So we'll get in, we'll get out. But it was cool to kind of just kind of see the scale of the ships and stuff, and at least see something going on, not just being in the cockpit of like the Aldous while everything's going on. So it was cool to see some of the stuff.
Yeah. JJ partied up with us as a guest member. We set course for his destination, Parapeum, reachable only by a wormhole.
And I remember I hadn't quite got there yet, but I remember you referencing that it reminded you of Phantasy Star 2.
Yes. Yeah. Just kind of like the rounded environments, like the rounded walkways and buildings, for some reason, just reminds me of like the towns, the settlements in Phantasy Star 2.
And one thing that it not necessarily a bad thing, but it was kind of a little disappointing that like there were some areas that like when you are leaving or going into the actual like town of Parapeum, after you walk out of that like I guess airport terminal of sorts or transfer terminal of whatever, getting into the
immigration
actual
center.
Yeah, like getting into the actual town. Even though like you can dash, you can't like just dash across. Like essentially, there's a lot of invisible walls.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've got to go from this area over to where the item shop is at, because there's a couple of like two different people giving side quests. So like, I'll just fly across. Oh, I can't. I have to actually run around. So it, like I said, it wasn't a bad thing. It was just kind of an annoyance, because it's like I can fly. Why can't I just like create these shortcuts
Yeah,
that I'm not actually
penalize me if I fall.
yeah, which the game does. Whenever you're exploring or whatever, you take a little bit of HP damage whenever you go off of a cliff or something. So I was just like, that seems kind of weird.
Yeah, Parapeum was cool. This was, I guess, on the Aldous, and then Parapeum subsequently. In terms of Isoa, I figured, okay, I've beaten basically everybody on Aster 4, or pretty much everybody on Aster 4. I guess that's basically everyone will be playing, and then, finding people up in space that play too. It's like, oh, nope, still more matches to fight.
Yeah, it's like how did this transcend to a couple of planets? Like, this is all the rage on Aster 4. Like, how is it all the rage on Aster 4 and it's also played here?
Yeah, that's like buying the space food on Aster 4. It's like, wait a minute, you guys are an underdeveloped planet that has no contact with other worlds. How do you have this space food?
Yeah. Which I still do not have the achievement for, like, Table God, I think is what it is, which I'm assuming has to do with Isoa.
Yes, and that, I looked into that yesterday, I think it was, and that is eventually unlocked through post-game content.
Okay.
There are more Isoa players that get unlocked after you've beaten the game.
Because, like, I've beaten all of the masters. I defeated the grand champion back in Larset Village, and I was like, okay, after I beat this old dude in Larset Village, I will have this achievement. And then I beat him, and the achievement didn't pop, and I was like, who else? Like, I've literally traveled space and taken on other people from different planets. Like, who else is there? But I was also kind of surprised at some of the Isoa pieces that I was getting after taking on like these like Master 8 and the Grand Champion. Like, they weren't as spectacular as I was kind of thinking they would be, with them being such a high-ranking opponent. But ultimately, I think that I have beaten everybody so far. Now, granted, I haven't done into the post-game stuff, but yeah, I was just like, man, I really thought that this guy from the first village that you go to, like, going back to that village, taking him on, beating him, and the achievement would pop. But yeah,
I thought the same.
But let's see.
Yeah,
so
dealing with through Parapeum, you learn a lot about Scorpium Network. JJ's eager to teach you and take you to the learning center, try and convince you to integrate with the Scorpium Network. And of course, everybody's pretty much vehemently against it. But before long, the Centralists are attacking Parapeum.
Yeah, that's
They're trying to take over the integration plant. They're really stalling things. And I want to say this is when we have a showdown with Bennett. I have in my notes that, Bennett integrated with Scorpium 15 years ago. So that means there's been Federation rot for at least the last 15 years. He's talking about the Sovereign. The Sovereign is basically the leader of the Centralist Scorpium, which is far different from regular Scorpium. Scorpium is supposed to be a hive mind where everybody's at the same level. And with the Centralists, they say, no, there's one person who's at command. So, of course, that's going to be some opportunity for corruption and issues.
Which,
Now, with at one point, I think you had talked about Ray's brother and his hair. What about Bennett's hair?
I mean, that
when he took off the hat, his crazy looking hat, and then it's like, oh, he's got a pompadour right there. He's got hair that goes out.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, so you had to have a hat specially made for your hair. Yeah, that's it's as far as style goes, as far as like fashion and stuff goes, like Star Ocean is very very out there. Like all like the fantasy characters are fairly like Leticia, Albert. Um, I mean,
Midas.
I guess to a point, Midas is very buff for being such a like magic user, but like they're very fantasy styled. They're I was actually kind of like I guess I'm not too surprised that they didn't have any like costume changes for the fantasy characters as they started going in like dealing with space. Um, but you know, it's just like Leticia's metal armor suit. I don't think would really benefit being in space.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there's the actual like the science side of of sci-fi. Uh, you know, Antonio, Ray's dad, Bennett, um, very just out there styles. I mean, I guess there's Malkia from Astro 4 that
Yeah.
very eccentric style there as well. But yeah, like when he had the hat on, I was like, okay, that seems to be a little much. And then you fight him, you defeat him, and then the hat is off. It's like, oh, you have that hair, okay. Um,
But yeah, through that
but
fight, or afterward, the aftermath of that fight, you learn that Remington Kurtzman, the most bloodthirsty bastard in the Federation, is leading an invasion of Vergold. There's a fleet of Federation ships heading there. You learn that Kurtzman is the Sovereign. He's the one at the top of the centralist Scorpium food chain.
and it essentially, it really kind of plays back into like what Marielle had been talking about earlier, just like, who within the Federation can we trust? Like, are we going to be dealing with the entire Federation as being part of the Centralists, or like what is going on? Because even Curtis can't really answer who is and who isn't
Nope.
like sided with the Centralists.
And during this section, I think on your way back to Vergold, you learn that the Vela Gulf, Captain Curtis's ship, Captain Curtis Ulrich, he survived. I think there was some question whenever you guys were fleeing the Scorpium battleship.
Because I think he basically it seemed like he was sacrificing his ship to get Aldous out of
to let Aldous get out of there.
Yeah.
Drawing the attention of, I think it was Bennett's ship. I think Bennett was the one launching the attack, and Captain Curtis basically flew in and said, get out of here, Aldous.
Yeah.
And then at this point, we had the opportunity to complete a couple side quests for JJ to kind of get Parapeum cleaned back up, and then he joined the party as a full-fledged member.
Yeah, and this just kind of one thing that's a little, I guess, pseudo frustrating is like JJ, he ends up joining the group so late in the game that I never really like my characters were around level 85 by the time that JJ ends up joining the group, and I think he joins like level 63 or something, like very low level. Now granted, there's items and stuff that can kind of close that gap pretty quickly,
but I mean, I don't even think that's much of an issue. I don't remember it being an issue of him having lower HP or lower defense than the rest of the party, because he also arrives with basically enough skill points to unlock all of, if not 80% of his skill tree.
And that was kind of another thing, like Ray's skill tree. Well, I guess Ray's skill tree wasn't that bad, but like JJ didn't really have a whole lot of like actual skills or abilities to unlock. as far as like his chain combos and stuff. Like he had the usual like passive abilities and stuff like that. But
Which
like,
have you played JJ at all?
I haven't played as him, but I know he's more of a kind of like a counter.
Yeah, so I think that's predominantly why. I think it's like with the Semiomancy. It's like, okay, you don't really have combos with Semiomancy. You basically just cast, and that's it. I think a lot of JJ's are counters or setting up. So it's all of just a bunch of, okay, I'm going to enter into a stance and wait for you to attack me. And so there's not really... He has like a couple attacks. I think basically enough to fill out one of the chain combo sections. But he's not really suited for it.
Yeah, and I think even on some of those, like on those offensive abilities, it even states like this is not his way or his technique of fighting, so he's not going to generate any like VA meter stuff. Yeah. But it is cool to kind of, so you've got people from Aster 4, you've got Ray and Elena and Chloe that kind of represent space, and then it is cool to have JJ kind of as a representative of like Scorpium. It's just as far as like the dialogue and the storytelling and just the fact that he joins the group so late, there's not a whole lot of like really getting to know the character type of like.
Yeah, there's. I think I've encountered 3 or 4 private actions with him. Now, just through the story, there is a lot of conversations with him, just because there's a lot of info dumps and him kind of explaining the ins and outs of Scorpion. But yeah, it's not like you're getting to know him on a personal level the same way you did like Albert or Nina.
Yeah, and just kind of, it's like, okay, well, this is, hear stories about my father or my mother or what I did for school or how I got into this, and like, so yeah.
So you reach Vergoldian space. There's ships, battles occurring. The Federation's fighting in space. You're able to kind of sneak off and land on Vergnis. There's been some communication with Ray and Antonio's father, Raul, and then you finally meet him.
Yeah, he's got crazy hair as well, but he's a businessman, very much just looking at the bottom line, how like what's going to make him money, and essentially I think you had pointed out that Ray and Raul basically have like the same mannerisms, the same like gestures and stuff, which
yes,
after you said that, I couldn't not see it, like the way that he kind of like scratches his head, or he like
father,
pounds
like
his
son.
chest. Yeah. Of course, Antonio doesn't have like he's got kind of his own set of mannerisms, so at least Antonio kind of broke away from that. But
yeah, seems like the Federation is wanting to invade Vergold for the Symbo drives. Symbo drives are kind of like the mystical thing that have allowed Vergoldians to build such advanced androids like Elena, and then you find them. They found them down in the Provenience Cavern, this like mining area, and I think Nina's the one who points out, or someone points out, maybe Malkia, that hey, these are not unlike what is found in the Great Coil of Nilbeth, the ancient coil.
Yeah, I think Malkia points out that the symbols and stuff resemble semiomancy pretty closely, which it had been kind of alluded to kind of earlier in the game with like Ray trying to explain to Nina that
hey, we have symbology. It's not that dissimilar from semiomancy.
Yeah, so for the most part, like it was, it kind of the like we are all one in the same type of situation. There's yes, there's things that make us different, but at the same point, like there's a lot of shared things that just happen to have different names.
Yeah, Paldernia, the city you are interacting on Vergnis, on Vergold's moon. Kind of another cool environment. I love just getting to see sci-fi environments finally. So, like being on the Aldous, being in Parapium, and now being in Paldernia, kind of another starkly different sci-fi environment. Not necessarily large, You know, it's like city streets, and there's lots of invisible walls that basically just keep you on the straight and narrow, but still cool to interact with in a different and sci-fi environment.
And one thing, there was a little bit of verticality on some of the areas of Aster 4, but I really felt that in these, like with Parapium and Paldernia, and I mean even with like the in a later area with the spire, like trying to find treasure chests became much more of a like having to figure out how to get on top of things to get to a treasure chest. So it seemed like in the more science-y areas, they did more with verticality than they did with like wide expanse.
I mean, I disagree. There were places on Aster 4, like in the Larkus, or not Larkus region, but like the Osarian Plains or the Osarian High Roads, where there were those floating platforms.
Yeah. But I don't remember there being any like treasure chests or anything on those.
Well, you did say earlier in this episode you need to go back and double check that.
Oh, well, yeah. That's I still have about roughly 12-ish% left to as far as like finding those treasure chests. So yeah.
Yeah, so lots of stuff happens here, just like it has on Parapium and in the Aldous.
Yeah.
You fight Boldor again. You fight Valange or Gaston.
In their fused forms again.
Yeah. Yeah, they're big, like, Hulk-like forms. Of course, you defeat them. They get away. And then at some point, there's communication back with Aster 4, I think, from Lola, that, you know, a giant scorpion construct has appeared on or above the ancient coil in Nilbeth.
So is it on Paldernia that we fight Remington as well? Or is that a little bit later in?
You know?
Because I remember that there was definitely a fight. There was definitely a fight with Remington, because there was the scene where Boldor was like... Boldor was like, you are too weak to be the sovereign. I am the actual sovereign. And just like holds his hand out and I guess absorbs the memories or something of Remington, or I don't really know. Like there's all this like red glowy stuff that starts coming out of Boldor's body, and he just like I don't know if it like sucks out the life source or whatever of Remington, but essentially
he inherits whatever it is that made him the sovereign. Because down in the Provenience Cavern we fight Boldor and then Remington, and that's whenever Boldor sucks that stuff up, and you try and kill him, but then he just reverts back into the Scorpion network. And I think they're part of the issue with them is like, how do we defeat this guy? You know, we can defeat we can defeat his physical form, but he just, you know, reverts back into the Scorpion network.
Yeah. And there's definitely, I kind of like with like when dealing with like the wedding and stuff, like with Lambert, like there's definitely some fairly corny scenes, just like very humorous, and I don't know if they were necessarily meaning for them to be humorous, but just like with the characters interacting, like the situation between Boldor and Remington, but it kind of seems like it continues on throughout the rest of the game.
Yeah. At this point, I did a lot of just kind of cleanup, going back and viewing a lot of private actions, doing quests. At this point is whenever I ranked up from Grandmaster to Grand Champion in Isoa. I went back and spoke with Welch. She got her missing vineyard ring back. It was in the Vale Empire. She made Ray her business partner. And then I also started noting like all of the shop quests, all of the items I had yet to fulfill. And I don't think I'm going to go through and fulfill all of them at this point, but I did kind of make a cheat sheet on, okay, here's everything I need to fill in. And so I had been keeping up with that.
Yeah, because I think it was after dealing with all that, but not quite to the point of the giant construct being unveiled, but I think it was like after the Remington fight and before that Ray was just like, well, we haven't
What's
haven't
up with
heard from.
Welch?
Yeah, like, not that I like to run around and do her errands and stuff, but like I do miss her. So yeah, I always meant to go back, but for the most part, I was just like, I really need to get to the end of the game. Like, I want to complete the game so that when we record, we can actually talk about the ending.
Yeah.
And that was kind of, for the most part, that we.
And so one thing I did here too was, I ran out of money. It was the first
What?
time I'd run out of money, just because I'd always want to buy all the weapons and armor from the
Yeah.
shops. I think whenever it was Paldernia, I eventually ran out of money, and so I threw Albert back in the party because I had maxed out his money passive skill previously. I also threw Leticia back in, and I maxed out her unique ability that increases experience. Of course, it weakens her, so that's kind of like the trade-off. But later on, after beating the game, and then needing to beat it on the harder difficulty, needing to grind some levels, I eventually looked up and kind of realized, okay, a good thing to do with her is she has another passive ability that increases the effects of armor. And so what you want to do is max that out, and then through synthesis, get her some armor that increases the experience gained from battles. And so, she has a piece of armor that has 110% experience gained from battles, and then paired with like an additional 50% or 45% from that boost, and then with some other accessories, the Asoa pieces that improve experience gains. I was just burning through levels and raking in the money.
Well, I think I got close to running out of money, because especially after getting JJ, getting his weapons and stuff, because I believe there's an achievement for getting 90% of the weapons.
Yes.
In the game. And so yeah, like I always make sure that whenever I go to a shop that I get at least one weapon for everybody. Which I know there's a lot of the weapons that I think you have to like craft. So I'm hoping.
Yeah, most of them it looks like are going to come through crafting, and so I think we're both sitting at like 60-something% of weapons obtained. So maybe like half are through item creation.
So yeah, that's for the most part. Like I started kind of messing around with crafting because I was trying to figure out what I needed to do to make the tiers of Aphrodite, and I ended up making 7 or 8 of them, and yeah, kind of in the process of making all that, making those, creating all sorts of other like potions and stuff. But yeah, like I was glad to figure out the items to make the tiers of Aphrodite. I really wish I knew. Did you ever figure out the auto?
No.
Okay, because like I feel like that would have made things a little bit easier to just like once I figured out what I needed, just being able to say, hey, just do it. So yeah, I need to look to see just what. Well, I guess I don't really have to worry about it now. But I never figured out the auto compounding thing, and I think it's only with compounding that it has the auto thing. So
yeah, there's a whole bunch of unique skills related to the various item creation.
But so for the most part, after all of that, they do end up getting the warning that Aster 4 has this giant construct that is of scorpium make, and that essentially the planet is being invaded and overrun by swarms of scorpium, which it's all over Nilbeth. Of course, Malky is very concerned about the Trathan. If they survived, if they were, like eradicated, or if they were forced into integrating with the with Scorpium, um, but I think they said that everybody got away. Like there wasn't like
Yeah, everyone down on Aster 4 is working together, like the Vale Empire, Asarius. They're all working to shelter the Trathans. They evacuated a lot, and of course in Nilbeth, in the Ancient Coil, there are a number there. Like you go there, and the shop's still operational.
yeah.
But yeah, up in that Scorpium Spire, Valange and Boldor are resting at the top. Valange, again, his fused Hulk form, he kind of reveals he wanted. A lot of this was done to free Vir from the Scorpium. He thought he could, gain enough power within the Centralist Scorpium to kind of eradicate them and free Vir from their influence. But even he admits that, well, I don't think I have a path forward in that regard.
Yeah. And of course, any references or anything that Boldor mentions is just the fact that this whole process is to bring peace and bring everybody together, and that you will all be my children and all that kind of stuff. Like,
yeah, but Duma states, like the quote verbatim almost was, "I don't believe Boldor's actions are one seeking evolution, but rather conquest."
Yeah, which, yeah, I mean, is
it was kind of
crystal clear.
Yeah, it was kind of funny seeing through this late game stuff, like Duma come to realization with like, well, this just doesn't make sense. This is not the Scorpium way. Like,
yeah,
there shouldn't be forced integration. Like, there shouldn't be one person at the top of the pyramid.
Like that is not the way that Scorpium was created. It was like everybody was supposed to be on like equal playing field. There wasn't supposed to be just one person in charge of everything. Which I don't know if it was kind of like around that same conversation or not, but essentially Duma started to open up because of how everybody kind of reacted and just accepted Elena, even though Elena is not an organic being. She's an android, but everybody treats her as if she's a living organic being.
She's just one of the gang.
And so that Duma kind of explains just how surprised, because I think there was a line in there about how organic beings usually use artificial creations or beings as like tools, as just objects to use. But with how everybody treats and reacts and just deals with Elena, like she's a living, breathing person. And so kind of showing Duma that, there is hope for kind of like this like coexistence type of thing. But for the most part, like going through all of the getting access to the Spire, going through that, fighting Valange for like the third or fourth time, I think once, I don't really remember anything too memorable getting up to the actual Scorpium network, like when you go into the Cybermind. I think once you get up there, I think you have to deal with Gaston again for like the
no
fourth...
Gaston. I think Gaston was killed in the Provenience Cavern. Because I remember, because whenever you beat Boldor atop the Scorpium Spire, this is whenever he reverts back to the Scorpium Network, and they're like, "What do we got to do?" And I think Duma, informs, well, if you want to get rid of Boldor, you're going to have to enter into a quasi-integrated state, basically not fully integrate with a Scorpium, but you got to get in the network to kill him. So they're going to have to upload their consciousness to the Scorpium network, which is going to leave their bodies at risk because they're just going to be up there unattended. Yeah. And then, what do you know? Here comes Lola. Now we have somebody to watch our bodies. But
yeah, very, very convenient.
Very convenient. But at that point, Valange survived. He was not totally dead, so she's there caring for him. and I think they mentioned something about Gaston. Gaston did not make it, but Volange's intentions were more pure. I think Gaston was really just corrupted by the Scorpion, and he, at some point, just became like Boldor, craved power.
Which I think it was... was it Paldernia, I believe, with the like JJ's home place or home
Parapium
planet?
Was
Parapium.
JJ's.
And so yeah, like Duma basically connects the dots of like, do you remember the learning facility that you were at? That's basically going to be the same process as like dealing with Boldor in the Scorpion network. Is essentially, that same the same way that you interacted with all the Duma that were in the learning facility. That's what's going to happen here. So
yeah, and this tranche of the Scorpion network was basically was emblematic of Boldor's deep psyche. We entered into this big like hub and spoke system where there were like 8 different paths to go down. We'd interact with some, basically having to solve puzzles or kind of reach the end of the little area, and then we'd get a memory of Boldor's.
And which... I think it took me a little bit because I went through each one, but of course there's some that weren't lit up, so you couldn't go into them. It took me a little bit. I think I'm assuming each individual place, like you have to like explore and do absolutely everything in that little area, like fight all the whatever, teleport to different areas and stuff. Because like I went through them. I got to the end. I recruited all of the characters except for Leticia back.
Did you ever get Leticia?
Yeah. Okay. I ended up getting her towards the end. But like I was finding all the party members and stuff, getting them back together and all that, but like it highlighted an area. I was like, okay, I have to go here. I don't understand why I can't go there. Like it's like it is the checkpoint. Like it is where I'm supposed to go. So yeah, like I went back through all of those different spokes over and over and over again, and then eventually, like as I was playing, I ended up unlocking a couple of Baldor's memories and stuff. So I'm assuming that I didn't feel like I was doing anything different, but I did notice that there was a couple times that I would go through an area, I would end up teleporting a couple times, but then if I went back to that area, I like the teleportation thing was gone, and then eventually, just after going back through those areas over and over and over again, eventually I ended up finding Leticia and then moving the story forward. But I was starting to get kind of concerned because I was like, I really don't want to have to look up what I need to do next, because this just doesn't seem to make any sense.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I did, but it seems like there's probably like one of those spokes I didn't enter, because whenever I go back and look at my map for the Scorpion Network, I'm missing like 1 or 2 floors, like 1 or 2 levels. And so right before going into the final boss, you only have the one spoke you can enter. So, or before then, I had tried going through everything I had access to, and I was like, well, nothing filled out those missing spots, so maybe there's additional levels that I did not reach yet, because that's what I had happen in the integration plant. On Parapium, I noticed there were like 4 levels I did not have access to. So at some point I went back and like kind of examined everything, and then eventually realized, oh, there's this one room that has really high ceilings and you can fly up there, and there's like another 2 or 3 floors. So I don't know if it's the same thing with the Scorpion Network, and I'm hoping there's not like a treasure chest or 2 I missed there.
Yeah.
And if there is, hopefully I can, go back. I've not looked since I've started doing the post game stuff, so maybe I have access to all those spokes now.
But yeah, so essentially, dealing with, having to fight Boldor for the 5th or 6th time. He finally gets defeated. But before that, like going through, like getting to kind of relive some of his younger days, memories.
Just memories throughout his life.
Getting to kind of hear him talk about Tatiana, the
His departed
connection.
wife.
Yeah, the connection between the Vale Empire and the Kingdom of Asarius. Uh, the just the fact that I think it was it his mother that died of the rot or something, that essentially like
No,
Asarius,
his
or was,
wife.
or was that Tatiana as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
Tatiana was his wife, died of the rot, and that, Gerard was talking about, why'd we have to lose mommy? Like, why didn't the
Oh
Vale
yeah,
Empire help?
that's right. It was
And
Gerard.
through a lot of those memories, Boldor seemed like a pretty even-keeled, even-handed person before, encountering the Veer, or maybe before he lost his wife.
Yeah, because I think the last memory before you actually fight Boldor again is basically he's kind of praying, but quote unquote talking to Tatiana, and just like wondering what she would have said. Uh,
What is her advice to dealing with the Veerians?
yeah, like going this route in regards to Scorpium and stuff. Uh, so like it does, like before Scorpium actually gets involved, it does seem like Boldor's not a terrible person, or a crazy insane person, but uh, obviously after he does start getting integrated into the Scorpium network, that kind of goes out the window. He becomes a little batshit crazy, and just wants to unify the entire universe under his leadership for peace.
Yeah.
But yeah, like he kept making pleas with, or not really making pleas, but essentially telling Leticia that her fire is exactly what the Scorpium network needs. But obviously everybody within the group is just like, nope, this is we are going to make sure that what you want to happen does not happen.
Yeah, I like during these final battles, these battles with like some of the Federation people and just these big climactic battles, that there was a lot of talking during them. Couldn't necessarily hear all of it.
Yeah.
Just because of all the battle pop-offs, everybody announcing their moves, or just like But
Yeah,
at least seeing the subtitles down there, being able to follow along with what they're saying.
Yeah, and that's one area that I don't really know how they could have done that differently, but there were plenty of times where they would be having conversations in the middle of combat, and just all of the sounds going off because of the combat drowned out what people were saying. And yeah, like dealing with Boldor, or dealing with Valange, or just any of those really big fights where these conversations were taking place, I was having to like jump back and forth between reading the words because I couldn't hear what they were saying. And luckily, based on my build up, I really didn't have to worry too much about the actual battles. But there was one battle in particular, and I can't remember what the baddie was, but I think it was after the party separated from Ray. You basically had to fight a boss, or like a pseudo boss, with just Ray as your party member, and that fight took me a little bit because the boss was able to just like freeze Ray in place and then just wail on him, and without having Nina and my other party members with me, kind of made it a little more challenging. It was the first time in a long time that I was like, oh crap, like I don't know how I'm supposed to get past this guy, because it's just Ray, and I don't have Nina, who is my super healer, super buffer character. So that was the first fight in a long time where I was like, oh crap, I really have to like think about what I need to do for this fight. Luckily, you're not without your party members for very long after that fight. But it was kind of a change of pace, and I don't know if you ran into any challenges with that either. but
No, not really on the difficulty we played at.
okay.
But
So
with this final boss, going back and trying to beat him on the hardest difficulty, that is one where I had to like, okay, let me go back and grind a couple levels. Let me come back at this and let me review all my chain combos and the equipment I have. Let me try and maybe get a better mix here.
so what so what level did your main party kind of finish at?
I want to say probably like upper 90s to 100.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought I was doing pretty well with the levels, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
so let's see. Whenever, this last battle, Boldor, he doesn't take his normal form. He has some sort of big monstrous form,
yeah,
like a
almost like a wolf type of.
like wolf, scorpion, flying beast. He launches up in the
Yeah.
air. He shoots fire and ice out of his both ends.
Which I did have to remind myself. Oh yeah, targeting, and I can change the where to target. When I was targeting him directly, like his body, not like the thing that he was sitting on, but like himself. It seemed like I was doing a lot more damage and progressed a lot faster with that fight.
Yeah. And so once we beat him, all is right with the world.
Yeah, he doesn't take the loss very well. Now, granted, this is like the 6th time that he's lost to us.
Yeah.
But yeah, he really does not take the loss well.
Yeah, I like the cutscene that plays at the end. Kind of everybody back on Aster 4 walking. They're about to go their separate ways.
what
Aster
did you think
4s.
what did? Yeah, hiccup. So what did you think of Midas's walk?
I can't say I noticed it.
Oh, he just very. It's like his walks almost seem like his right leg was maybe a foot shorter than his left leg, because like he just kind of kept like hobbling like back and forth, but everyone else kind of seemed to be walking in kind of a normal pace. But it was cool to kind of start getting some of those closures.
Yeah, it was nice. I know there had been some discussion previously on the Alduus, wondering about, well, what is Aster 4's relationship with the Federation going to be? Like, we've had all this interference from spacefaring planets, spacefaring civilizations, and then during that final cutscene, Mariel's talking to Leticia about it, that they're going to become a protectorate, not necessarily have a lot of interactions with Federation, but basically be on the watch list. We're going to keep our eyes on you. And I like Ray. Ray's just like, well, Vergold is not a member of the Federation, so I can come visit you whenever I want.
Yeah, and he even kind of tosses the idea out there of, if it was up to me, I'd create a branch of Lauren's logistics on the planet, so we can come and go as we please. You can see as much of us or as little of us as possible, or as wanted. But yeah, essentially Ray's just he's not a fan of the Pan-Galactic Federation, which makes sense. I mean, through the Federation, his ship got shot down and got dragged into all of this to begin with. But
I think through some of his and Marielle's private actions, he kind of begrudgingly respects them a little bit more. Because, of course, you can look at it through the lens of, well, this all happened as a result of the centralist Scorpium-infected Federation, and not necessarily the Federation itself, although he does not agree with all of their ideals.
Oh, and one thing that one of my later notes, that essentially Duma sacrifices itself to pretty much final provide the final killing blow to Boldor, because essentially he is just refusing to die, but essentially Duma sacrifices itself to to see to it that Boldor actually dies this time. And just kind of telling Elena and Ray just the what to look for, and just the fact that, hey, you guys have to get out of here. I won't be able to hold this space open very long or much longer, so I've got to get you guys out of here. But yeah, I saw that note. I was like, oh yeah, Duma dies.
Yeah. So did you get any character endings?
I got one, which I don't know how many you can get.
They unlock one at a time. So
Okay.
who did you get by default, or who did you get? Well, let's see. Did you use any of the Tears of Aphrodite?
I did not, because I honestly didn't really think that I would until the credits were rolling. I really didn't think I was at the end until like the credits started rolling. I was like, okay, well, there we go. I'm at the end.
Okay, well that's good, because you'd wanna like save before using them, use them all, and then go get the ending and reload that save. So who did you get?
So just by playing the game, I got Elena.
Okay, that was the same.
Okay, so I just because I didn't use any items, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, so this is strictly off of there's just the private actions, and I'm assuming the food at the inn and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So just based on those two things, I got Elena, which the cutscene kind of references just the fact that she started to notice that whenever Midas and Ray were putting her back together,
jealous.
yeah, that she praised Midas for his ability to help out with putting her back together. And then essentially, Ray's like, "What? No, I wasn't jealous." But yeah, I thought it was a cute little ending for that. I really didn't know which ending I was going to get. I knew characters that I wasn't going to have an ending with, like JJ or Albert. Mainly because I didn't really use those characters a whole lot. I thought maybe Leticia, just based on just how the story was going. I kind of thought that, if there was going to be a default, I kind of figured that it would be between those two characters, Ray and Leticia. But yeah, for the most part, I'm curious to see, like, especially with Ray and JJ. Is that an achievement?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I've since gone back and got Albert and Nina, and I've just haven't done any more since then, just focusing on post-game stuff. But, they're, his and Albert's, his and Nina's, they're both kind of like Elena's, just quick little postscripts on what those characters are doing now that everything's been resolved. So I would imagine JJ's is something to do with Parapeum and like, hey, thanks for helping us out back then.
Yeah. So I'm wondering. So did you end up beating Boldor on the hardest difficulty?
Yes. Yeah, I went through and beat him on a Universe and Chaos.
Are you able to? Are you able to go into the settings and change the difficulty, or do you?
Nope.
Like how?
Yeah, you just go through the settings.
Okay. Because yeah, that's now because yeah, I ended up saving before going through that last spoke. So for the most part, like saved there because I was basically just
your
saving.
clear data save you put on a separate save file.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because yeah, like as I was going through those spokes and stuff, and I would fight a boss, it's like, okay, I'm saving now. I'd go through another spoke, fight another boss, like, okay, I'm gonna save now. Because I couldn't really get a grasp, and this is one thing that I think I texted you about. So many characters say, hey, we should wrap things up before we move forward because we may not get to come back. So because that happened a handful of times, I was like, I don't know when the actual ending is going to happen. So, especially going through those spires, I like tripled up on my saving frequency because I was like, I don't want to mistakenly go through another spire and then end up like this is it. Because but I am glad, essentially, the fact that you can still fast travel anywhere.
Yeah, that's so great.
Despite the fact that all of this shit is going on, like all these invasions and stuff, you can still freely travel about the galaxy.
Yeah, I mean it's a video game.
Yeah, so I'm glad that's still capable, because I know that there are points in the game that prevents you from being able to fast travel. So I'm glad that that's still there, because I still don't have the side quest achievement, and I think I've got 70 something % of the side quests complete.
Okay,
So,
which it's the same as the others, even though it says the achievement trophy description says complete 55 side quests. That translates to 90% of side quests.
Oh, okay.
Just like the other similar achievements trophies.
Gotcha. So I've got that to do, which I still have like a couple that I've already like picked up to just complete. So
yeah, so I've since beating the game, I've gone back and beat the game on a couple of other difficulties, done a couple other endings, still have a lot of more endings to go. I found the last mini bunny. Whenever you get to that, let me know, because you'll want to look it up or need to help on it, I'm sure.
Is there one inside the spire?
No.
Okay.
But there is one somewhere that doesn't show up when you scan it. And so that was the one I was missing.
Of course. I'm not sure. Let me pull it up on the Xbox app real quick, because I don't know what percentage I'm at.
I think you have 2 left. I think you're at like 86% complete.
Let's see. Achievement, Star Ocean. Learning on the fly. Of course, everything's going to be secret achievement.
Yeah, but I was just looking at it a little bit ago. You have like 2 left.
Okay, so...
and then, of course, going through the post-game dungeon, I've opened that up and kind of started experiencing that. I've done a little bit of it last night, and I've done a little more tonight. But one of the things I've experimented with a lot more in the post-game and kind of late-game stuff was mixing it up with the chain combos. I predominantly played as Ray, and I kind of mixed some stuff up where with one of his chain combos, it ends with this like super strong attack. I forget the name of it, but it takes 5 AP, basically half of your AP, and it's got a fairly decent charge on it, but it does like 400 damage, whereas your like opening attacks are doing 30 damage. And then I've paired that with some accessories or armor that increases the damage done at close range. And because this is a close range attack, it's just doing like massive damage. I think I've seen it hit upwards for 40,000 points of damage.
Ooh.
And then secondly, I've been playing as Leticia a lot more. I've got a chain combo set up with her where she does like an opening attack. She does an active ability, which I've maxed out, and it increases her attack by like 100% or 50% for the next 2 seconds. So basically just for the next attack. And I've done the same thing where she's got a really powerful attack that ends that chain combo, and she does like massive amounts of damage with that.
So there's with Ray, there's two attacks that I've started using fairly regularly. I think they both do 5 or use 5 AP. One's the Abyssal Gate, which kind of like creates a Dragon Ball Z like fire around.
Yes, that's
Ray.
the one. That's the one I've been using.
Okay, and then he just like appears at the enemy and just strikes him.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was, and yeah, it does a lot of damage, and
then
very
paired
useful.
with the close contact, close combat buffs, even more.
Whew. Yeah, I need, for the most part, I haven't really done, I haven't paired too well with the active and passive abilities. Mainly that the chain combos I've just had is for the attacks. But in after I think it was in the last episode or the episode before, just the realization that the AI controlled characters have a max pull of like 5 AP.
Yep.
I did go back through and retool pretty much everybody's chain combos and separated out the higher AP ones for like the holding button. So like hold Y for this or hold B for this super attack. After going through and fine tuning those chain combos, I started seeing a lot more variety in the attacks that my allies were using. So I was like, okay, cool. I think I'm figuring this out.
Yeah, so I noticed the same thing after retooling them. It's like, oh, I'm seeing more attacks. And another thing I saw, like on a Reddit thread, the person mentioned that I think it is explained when they are giving you the tutorial on it, but it's not explained well, or maybe it's kind of hidden. But those skills or attacks that are on the hold chain combos do more than the just button presses.
Really?
That's what was said on this Reddit thread. So that's another thing. I've got the abyssal gate or whatever the attack is on my hold. So I basically do combo, hold, and it basically depletes my AP gauge. But that final attack, whenever that lands, it does a lot of damage.
Hitting their weak spot for massive damage. But yeah, like for the most part, like the combat in like Divine Force, it can be as simple as you want it, but it can also be much more complex than what I had initially like gave it credit for. Just the pairing items with the active abilities, and because I did especially like what I was saying before with that one fight with that like pseudo boss where I was playing as Ray and just Ray himself. Like I had to kind of go back through and fine tune like the accessories that were equipped. So it's like I need things to help get things out faster. I need to be able to charge the VA gauge faster. I need to because it's just me, and then making use of the passive abilities of like items getting used faster or stuff like that. But for the most part, up to that point, I really didn't have any need to get too crazy deep into the combat system because I wasn't having any difficulties with the fights. So it wasn't until that fight that I was like, oh crap, I need to really strategize now, and there's so much that you can do. So it's just like, okay, well, if I put this here and put this here, but yeah,
there's a lot of synergies, and I get tons of Reddit notifications now because I like looked at a Star Ocean thing once, and so now every time something new's posted, I basically get that. But it is super helpful.
You're interested in this?
Yeah, it is super helpful just to see what other people are doing, and yeah, there are some just crazy synergies that match up, and just some of the stuff people are doing with the item creation and then synthesis with their armors and weapon. There is, like you said, this game can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be.
And it just kudos to Tri-Ace for having such a well-rounded combat system. Obviously, I wish they would have had a bigger budget to kind of iron out some things about the game, but ultimately, I think it's a really good game that people should check out.
So before we wrap it up, now that you've beat it, and with the admission that there's still a fair amount of post-game stuff that could sway you, maybe to like it even more, like it less, how does it rank among Star Ocean games in your opinion?
Um, one thing that you and I had talked about before is like so much of Star Ocean. It's always the illusion of sci-fi, but it's mostly fantasy. Uh, I really feel like with Divine Force, it started out that way where it's like, oh, this is just gonna be another typical Star Ocean that says that it's sci-fi, but it's really just a uh, fantasy RPG. But like they manage, and I don't know if this is going to be part of the post game, but the giant red crystal thing and all the Duma crystals on Astra 4 make no sense still. But I guess, well, I guess in a way,
the red crystals on Astra 4 make sense.
Okay,
you just may not have figured them out. You could figure them out right now. You just may not have put two and two together yet.
So I'm assuming just, but anyway.
Yeah, so does it, of course, you're a super fanboy of 3, so I'm sure it doesn't top 3, right?
No, I think Till the End of Time
is this strong number 2 then?
I would, yeah, I'd probably give it a strong number 2. I like the first 2 games in the series based on just a little bit that I've played of both of those, because I did play First Departure, the PSP remake or port, and a little bit of Second Evolution, also on the PSP, but just the fact that those are still fairly, like, very fantasy focused in the early going.
So, so you have not beat 1 or 2?
I have not beaten them, no.
Wow, I've actually played more Star Ocean games than you. Or played them to completion more, because you've played Star Ocean 4. I have not touched that, and then neither of us have played 5.
So as far as, I'd probably go like Till the End of Time, then Divine Force.
And then just a toss-up for the rest, because you haven't really put a ton of time into them.
Probably First Departure for 3, and then a toss-up for the rest. Which, you and I, we've talked about, Star Ocean 5, possibly diving into that.
Let's work backwards.
Which, that was kind of another thing that Marielle does kind of do more referencing and talking about her.
It's directly connected to Star Ocean 5.
Yeah, so being able to kind of see that.
And that's one thing at the end, too, where her grandfather, Emerson T. Kenny, one of the characters from Star Ocean 5, is still alive in the Divine Force, and I think she's saying that he is basically taking over the reins of the Pan-Galactic Federation just to help them kind of clean up and get through all this Scorpion mess now that the Centralists have been defeated.
Yeah, so I'm obviously I don't know the future for Tri-Ace and Star Ocean, but I know I think if I vaguely have this correct, like 1 and 2 I think is fairly linked together. 3 is its own outlier. It's its own thing, and you and I have played the game, and I absolutely love the game. But then I think Last Hope, I think, is on its own as well. I think it's just like a standalone story, but then 5 and 6 are tied together. I would love to see Tri-Ace given the opportunity to kind of start tying more of the stuff into a cohesive story, or at least maybe just say, hey, we're going to just kind of pick up and continue on from 5. So like 5 and 6 will be together. We'll do a Star Ocean 7. Star Ocean 7 will tie into the events of 5 and 6. Because I know like Till the End of Time is way out there. It references a lot of stuff that is a mainstay within obviously the Pan-Galactic Federation and stuff, but based on just the development of that game and how the game ends, it's very much on its own. So I don't know how they could tie really into that. But yeah, it would be cool to see like them kind of continue on what they've been building up with 5 and 6, knowing that there is connection between them. If they're given, obviously if they're given an opportunity to do a Star Ocean 7. I don't know how well the game is sold, but so far, like, most of the people that I see talk about the game say it's a good game or they love the game. Like, yes, it has its flaws, it has its issues and stuff, but ultimately it seems like the feedback on the game is positive by the people who are playing it. So
yeah, it is a solid game.
Fits that PS2 JRPG very well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think just based on the post-game content, we'll probably still be talking about Star Ocean for at least 1 or 2 more episodes.
Yep.
Probably guaranteed 1 more episode. So we will be back with episode 25 of Just One More Podcast next week.
24.
Is it 24?
This was
episode 20. It's one of the 20s. It's either 23 or 24.
Yeah, it's 20. It'll be 24 because this was episode 23.
Okay, well,
I think I named my file from last week wrong.
Oh, okay. So, we will be. Well, you'll hear from us. I'm Jeff from Just One More Level.
And this was John from mybrainongames.com.
See you, everybody.